Hi everybody, today we are going to review claim and evidence and what they are. And this is to help you identify the claim and to understand what evidence is so you can identify it properly. So this is a review of claim and evidence. So let's start. What is a claim? A claim is the author's main argument or what the author's main point is. And basically it's what is the author trying to prove? And we can usually find that in the first or last paragraph of an article or whatever text you're reading. It's usually the first and last paragraph. Somewhere in there, the author has written his or her claim. A claim is the author's opinion or argument, and a claim is not a fact. It could be stated to sound like a fact, but a claim is not a fact. A claim is an argument. That means that somebody else could argue the opposite or argue something else, right? So that's what a claim is, and it's just what the author is trying to prove to the audience. So here's an example of a claim. The study of dinosaurs can create empathy and more responsible citizens in the world. This is an opinion, it's an argument. Here's another example. Dogs are better pets than cats. See, this second example is a lot more clear in terms of how it's an argument and an opinion, right? But take a look at that first example of a claim. The study of dinosaurs can create empathy and more responsible citizens in the world. It sounds so matter of fact. But in fact, it is only an opinion. It's an argument that someone is making. Can they prove that opinion? Of course they can. Can I prove that dogs are better pets than cats? Of course I can. And vice versa, the opposite as well. So that's how a claim works, okay? This is what a claim is not. The boiling point of water is 100 degrees Celsius. Well, that is a fact. It is a proven fact. A claim is not a fact. Now let's move on to evidence. Ready? Pay attention. Evidence can be any one of these things. Number one, evidence can be facts. Facts are proven through research and experiment, and it's agreed upon by specialists, and it's something that we can observe to be true. Okay, so a fact is not an opinion, it is proven through research or experiment. It's something that we can observe to be true. Here's an interesting fact. Did you know that some fungi create zombies, then control their minds? Well, if you really want to know specifically how this is a fact, this slideshow has a link to that article. Did you also know that there's only one letter that doesn't appear in any United States state name? There's only one letter. Can you guess what that letter is? It's a fact. One letter in the alphabet appears in no state name. This is not a fact. Sharks are dangerous, scary predators that live in the sea. You see how sometimes the way things are stated, it could sound like a fact? However, this is an opinion. Some people believe that sharks are dangerous, right? But however, most marine biologists would tell you that sharks are not actually a danger to human beings. I learned that on my summer trip whale watching recently when I spoke to a marine biologist. So the difference between facts is that they can be proven and are true and are proven through research and experiment. However, opinions like this that sound like they could be facts are just somebody's opinion. Quotations are another way that we can present evidence. And a quotation is commonly used as evidence because it is a fact about what somebody said or wrote. And quotations are usually stated like this. used inside quotation marks to indicate that these are the exact words that somebody said or wrote. And then, as you can see here, highlighted in the yellow is a statement like remarked or said or written by, right? To let the audience know who said it or who wrote it and that it's written or said. And then in the blue is who said it or who wrote it, remarked Mrs. Zucker. That's always used with quotations. And so quotations are never alone. Quotations are the exact words written or said by somebody, but always tagged. We call this a tag with who said it. Now, there are some important things to remember about quotations. We only use quotes when they come from reliable, trustworthy, and credible people or sources. We got to use our common sense. You wouldn't quote a dentist on the best way to write a book because a dentist has no knowledge really about how to write a book. But you would quote an author. Better yet, you would quote an accomplished author. That would make your quote that much more convincing. More about quotations. We tend to quote opinions and arguments from articles, but that's not actually evidence. Just because somebody said that sharks are dangerous, that's not evidence that they are. Unless, and here's the unless, that opinion is from someone who has authority on the subject. So, for example, if a marine biologist was quoted saying that sharks are dangerous, then we could use that quotation as evidence because
Sorry, I didn't catch that. Try talking about the edit.
Because the marine biologist is a credible source and has authority based upon their education and title to speak about that. So that's how we use quotes. Don't just pull a quote from anywhere and say, well, it's here, so it must be true. Just like you can't believe everything you read, right? We have to be careful about whose words we're taking to use as evidence. Authority is really important when we talk about quotes. The right, the power, the experience, the education, which makes a person someone that we should listen to about the topic. So you want to think about what's the topic? Does this person who wrote this thing or said this thing have the authority to talk about this topic? And if they do, then definitely use that quote. Another type of evidence is statistics. And statistics, people like to use them because numbers tend to convince people. Numbers that people collect from surveys or polls or research. So there are so many ways to gather numbers. You got to be careful about how the numbers are created. You have to do your research, which means you got to make sure that those numbers are reliable and you have to find out how those numbers were gathered. For example, if you used a statistic that said 75% of people prefer dogs over cats. See, that number sounds so convincing, right? 75%, that's a lot. But what if I told you that that number, 75%, came from me asking 3 people? Well, out of 3 people, 2 of them said that dogs were better than cats. See, that's not very convincing anymore, is it? The lesson here is that we must find good statistics to use. A really good statistic for this particular topic would be if we asked 1,000 people if they preferred dogs over cats. And if 75% out of 1,000 people said they did, that number would be convincing. So we have to make sure that we find out how the numbers gathered and where that number comes from in order for our statistic to be reliable and powerful. You could also use personal experience as evidence, and there are 2 types of personal experience. The first type is your personal experience when you're writing an argument. Your personal experience is valid if it demonstrates something about the claim or argument that you're making. And someone else's experience is the second type of personal experience. That's information that you would obtain through an interview with somebody or through reading a source about someone else's experience. So personal experience that demonstrates something about the claim can be used as evidence. We have to be careful because that personal experience must be very relevant to the claim or main point. Means it has to demonstrate something about the point that you're trying to make. If it has nothing to do with that point or has very little to do with the point you're trying to make, that personal experience is not very powerful in you trying to make your argument. Okay, so that's something we have to be careful about. And there's this other type of evidence called common knowledge. It's evidence that doesn't really need a citation from a source because it's knowledge that everybody knows. For example, very popular important dates that everybody knows about, like the 4th of July is Independence Day. Everybody knows that. Or like January 1st is New Year's Day. Everybody knows that. And so those dates and events and famous people and places that is common knowledge, we don't really need to cite a source for it. For example, everybody knows that George Washington was the first president of the United States and Abraham Lincoln was the 16th president. We don't need a source to cite common knowledge. That common knowledge can be used as evidence. Another type of evidence is visual. It's a picture. A picture can be used as evidence. They do that in court all the time. A picture is worth 1,000 words. Have you heard that saying? Well, pictures are really important pieces of evidence in the real world, and you can use pictures as evidence as well. Pictures or visuals are also types of evidence that can be used to make an argument in your paper. And like I said, this happens all the time in the real world, especially in court. You do have to cite the picture though, meaning you have to indicate where that picture came from. There's always a source for every piece of evidence unless it's common knowledge. And here charts can be used as evidence as well. So, if you find a chart or a graph that displays data, that chart can be used as evidence. Once again, we just have to cite where that chart came from. Charts and data, all of that is about evidence. Thank you for listening. And if you have any questions about evidence or claims, ask one of your Dream Team teachers.